Now, and welcome to game design using Scratch. This screenshot shows the game that we're ultimately going to make. So stuff falling from the sky and Scratch the cat catching stuff, gaining points in doing so. Right, Retrieval from last lesson. A costume is the look of your character, clothing and stuff as well, but it's the look of your character. An event is the way something starts in Scratch, for example a key being pressed. Last lesson we looked at changing characters when you pressed A, B or C, skipping to the different costumes. The interface is the layout or look of the software, so in our case the web app, where the buttons are, where the stage is, all that kind of good stuff. And sharing is the way to let others see your project, which is just generally set to private or unshared by default. So vocabulary for this week, reminder that an event is a trigger that starts something, for example key pressing. A sprite is a character or object that is not the background, quite important. A stage is the game area, so the area in which the sprites are going to perform their tricks. Right, okay, so steps to success for this lesson are, by the end of this lesson you will know what an event is, how to move a sprite, saving options and file management. Okay, so they're quite limited in Scratch, but I'll show you anyway. So, in this tutorial I will do the following: explain what an event is, go through a few event options, show how to move a sprite left and right, remind you how to change a costume, explain about saving in Scratch, and show you how to remind you how to share your project. Okay, so that's the plan. Let's do it. So going into Scratch, so scratch.mit.edu, and this is the home page. I'll show you I'm already signed in. These are my projects. So my stuff, little foldery icon. That's the advert that I built, the front screen. And let's just quickly show you what we're aiming for. So when I press the left and right keys, Scratch turns to face the correct direction and then moves in the correct direction. Okay, doesn't happen automatically, a little bit of coding to put in. So let's carry on. So I'm going to press create, and once it's loaded, so there's Scratch. Just drop them down to the bottom of the screen. I'm going to add some code to move him left and right, and this is going to happen on the trigger of the left and right keyboard arrows. So if I go into event, often we use this start flag one, which basically means when the game begins, do this. We're going to go with the key press triggers, and I'm going to choose the right arrow. So right arrow. So when right arrow is pressed within Scratch, I want it to... Now, you can use move, which will move you in the direction he's pointing. This isn't such a brilliant way of doing it. That you can change angles if you wanted to do driving games, that kind of stuff. You can go to a specific place in the on the stage. You can glide to a specific place on the stage. But what we're going to look at today is change X. So let's just pop back into the PowerPoint presentation, sorry. Get through all that lot. Yep. Next slide. Okay, so the stage, the reason I mentioned X, Scratch uses coordinates, so just like a graph in maths, there's the X axis there. If I'm changing X by something positive, Scratch will move to the right. If I change X by something negative, he'll move to the left. And if we were doing a different game, you can change Y by plus and minus as well. Okay, so just nip back into Scratch. So what I'm looking at is change X by 10. So that's a positive number. So when I press the right arrow, he moves to the right. So the positive X value. Okay, I'm going to set it up so that he moves to the left. So being a cool kid, obviously, I'm going to duplicate rather than going back into the list, and I'm going to change that to left arrow, and the opposite of 10 is minus 10. It's not actually purple after all. So when I press the left arrow, he does the moonwalk backwards. Okay, so right arrow and left arrow. No matter how cool the moonwalk might be, I'm going to change it so that he's pointing in the right direction. So back into my presentation, doing the moonwalk. So there's old MJ up there. Scratch is walking backwards when going left. This always happens. We're going to add a costume, flip it horizontally. So there's his normal costume. I'm going to add a second costume, flip it so that he's looking to the left, and then use the code block to switch to this particular costume. So costume, it might be costume 3 in Scratch because he's already got 2. Anyway, okay, so in Scratch, I'm going to look at costume. I'm going to get rid of this extra walking one just to save complication, and I'm going to duplicate this one, and I'm going to flip him horizontally. So there you go, he's now pointing the other way. So costume 2, he's pointing to the left, costume 1, he's pointing to the right. Okay, so that's costumes for now. At some point I'm going to give him a little basket to catch stuff in, but we'll get around to that. So in code, I'm also going to switch costume, so that's in looks, switch to costume, so maybe do it we'll do it afterwards. Okay, so it's going to change to costume 1, which is this one, pointing to the right, and not being a cool kid, he didn't duplicate, and then switch to costume 2 when he's pointing to the left. So moves to the right, that's all good, and moves to the left, he's now pointing in the other direction. So there's him moving backwards and forwards quite splendidly. Okay, once you've done that, add objects that are falling, trees. I wouldn't add a background just yet, but add all the bits and pieces. So for example, let's just give him an apple to catch. Okay, and change the size of it. So down there it says size. I'm going to go for 70% of the size. That's just a nice size to catch. If it's too big, you won't be able to fit so many in this on the screen. Also, it'll be just a bit too easy to catch. That might be a bit too big still. So look and see what 60 looks like. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, that we're going to build code in that makes these randomly appear and drop from the sky, so that Scratch can catch stuff. I think I might just give him a basket actually while I'm here. So in costumes, I'm going to click on Scratch. And I was just going to draw a basket. So this is just going to be about outlines. What colour is the outline? And we'll just draw it and see. So basket. Something like that. That would do. Scratch sort of has layers. You can put things behind each other. So for example, if I send this one back, just one, so oops, send backwards up here somewhere, there you go, backwards. It's behind his face now, and it looks like his, his hand might be behind it holding it up kind of thing. Need to copy that, so press copy, weirdly enough, and then in the second Scratch costume I'm going to paste it something like there. I keep right clicking, and we're going to send it behind, so backwards, so it's now behind his face, actually a little bit further along, there you go, behind his face and in front of his hand, so they should look about the same. Yeah, that would do. So he's got a basket now. Okay. Yeah. So he now moves backwards and forwards across the screen. He's pointing in the right direction. Yeah, as I said, add things that are falling from the sky. Maybe a couple of trees or, I don't know, parked cars, whatever you can find really. Right. As always, the share button is there. So it's now shared, and I can copy the link. Copy link to clipboard. Copied. So if I now paste that, it will. I could paste it in an email, perhaps. Send it to my teacher. Who would that be? No idea. Let's just go back for a sec. I'm going to name it because Untitled is a very poor project name. So catching stuff is descriptive enough, I'd say, for a name. Right, now that I've named that, or in fact actually before I named that, when I started to create this project, it automatically created in my stuff this one. Okay, so there's the original image that I used for my presentation. There's the one that I've been creating now. If I want to delete, I have to unshare, and then you get the delete button if you want to. Okay, yeah. So that's the sort of online file management. Let's just reshare it. Just feel better. Okay, sharing. Okay, if I wanted to save this as an actual file, maybe I want to email it to someone for some reason. I mean, I don't think there's any point because you just share a link rather than the actual file. But if you wanted to save sort of versions of this, you could file, save to your computer. You can choose copies, all that kind of stuff. If you wanted to keep this version and create a new copy that you would change, don't know, to develop it into a better game, you choose that one. I'm going to save to your computer. That would download the SB3 file, I believe. Yeah, so let's just bring up the desktop for now. Catching stuff. Yeah, so SB3 file, savings, and download it goes. if I wanted to use that file, I'd then choose File and Load from your computer, and then I'd select the file and it would upload into the game. Okay, so let's just pop back to the presentation, make sure I've done everything. So in this tutorial I have now, let's just make sure I've done everything, explained what an event is. So it's like a trigger that starts things, like key presses. I've gone through a few event options, well, 2, that would do. So it was the start button and the when key is pressed option. I've shown how to move a sprite from left to right and make him point in the right direction, which was quite handy. Reminded you how to change the costume so that he would be pointing in the right direction. I've explained about saving in Scratch, how it happens automatically and it's saved online, but you can save versions of it to send around, and reminded you how to share your project. Right, so having done all of that, here's what you're going to do. You're going to either write a list of instructions on how to move a sprite from left to right in Scratch. So from watching this video, write yourself a set of instructions, or actually engage with the lesson and follow what I've done. Create a game with a sprite that moves from left to right using Scratch. So either write instructions explaining what I've done in the video, or follow what I've done in the video. I really hope you choose this option, because we're going to be making a rather splendid game over the next couple of weeks. Right, if you are choosing a list of instructions, you could write things like number 1, sign into scratch.mit.edu, then look in the costumes tab, so basically following what I did, and then whatever you're going to do next. Right, so you have your orders. Yeah, hopefully you're going to make yourself a game in Scratch, or write some instructions. Send me the link if you're making a game, and make sure you get out and do some exercise, yeah? And I'll see you next week.